Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Sophia.
And I'm James. We're really excited to help you learn English and, most importantly, guide you on how to master it in just 100 days.
Whether you're just starting or you already know a little bit of English, this podcast is perfect for you. Our goal is to help you feel more confident speaking, listening, and understanding English every day.
So, let's get into it. You might wonder, is it possible to master English in 100 days? The answer is yes, but it takes a good plan and dedication. First, it's important to understand that learning a language is all about regular practice. You don't need to study for hours every day, but you do need to practice consistently.
That's right. Think of learning English like training for a sport. If you want to get better, you need to practice regularly. But it's not just about repeating the same things over and over. You need to challenge yourself, try new things, and always keep learning.
One of the best ways to start is by setting clear goals. If your goal is too general, like I want to speak English, it can feel overwhelming. So, break it down. For example, in the first week, your goal might be to learn 20 new words. Or you can aim to listen to English for 10 minutes every day. Small goals are easier to reach, and each time you reach a goal, you feel more confident.
Exactly. And don't worry if you make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes when learning a new language. It's part of the process. In fact, mistakes can actually help you learn faster because you remember what you did wrong and improve next time. The key is not to be afraid of them.
Speaking of practice, let's talk about how you can use English every day. You don't have to wait until you're in an English class or with a teacher to practice. You can start using English right away in your daily life.
Yes, even if you're just saying a few words here and there, it helps. For example, when you wake up, try saying a few things in English like good morning or I'm going to make breakfast. If you're writing a shopping list, try writing it in English. The more you use English in your normal routine, the more natural it will feel.
And don't forget about listening. Listening is just as important as speaking. A great way to improve your listening skills is by watching videos, movies, or even listening to podcasts like this one. Start with something simple and short. You don't have to understand every word. Just listen to the general idea, and over time, you'll understand more and more.
You can also use songs to help you. Choose a song in English that you like and listen to it often. You'll find that after a while, you start to understand the words and even sing along. It's a fun way to practice and improve.
Reading is another fantastic way to build your English skills. You don't have to start with big books. You can read short stories, articles, or even children's books. The important thing is to read something that you enjoy so it doesn't feel like a chore.
And while you're reading, make sure you have a notebook nearby. Write down any new words you learn. Try to use these new words in your conversations or writing. When you see or hear these words again, you'll recognize them and feel proud of your progress.
Speaking of progress, don't forget to celebrate your achievements, no matter how small. Learning a language takes time, but every step forward is a success. Maybe one day you understand a conversation in English, or you can speak without stopping too much to think. These are all signs that you're getting better.
Absolutely. And remember, it's not just about studying. You need to enjoy the process. If you're having fun learning, you'll want to keep going. So find activities that you enjoy, whether that's watching English shows, playing language games, or speaking with friends.
The next thing we should mention is practicing with other people. Don't be shy about speaking English with friends, family, or even strangers if you get the chance. The more you practice speaking, the more confident you will become.
Right? You don't need to wait until you're perfect at English to start talking to others. Even if you only know a few words or phrases, try to use them in conversations. You'll see that people are usually very understanding and will appreciate your effort.
So, to sum up what we've talked about so far, practice every day, even for a short time. Set small goals and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Use English in your daily life, whether you're listening, reading, or speaking. And most importantly, enjoy the learning process.
Now that we've talked about setting goals and using English in your daily life, let's dive into something really important: building strong habits. Habits are key when it comes to mastering any skill, especially a language. When you make learning English a habit, it becomes part of your routine, and you won't need to think too much about it. It will just happen naturally.
Yes, habits are powerful. So how do you build a habit of learning English every day? First, start small. You don't need to spend hours studying each day. Even 10 to 15 minutes of focused practice can make a huge difference. The important thing is to do it regularly so it becomes part of your lifestyle.
Exactly. Consistency is more important than the amount of time you spend. Imagine if you studied for 2 hours one day, but then didn't do anything for the rest of the week. That's not as effective as practicing for 15 minutes every day. The brain learns better when it gets small, regular reminders. So think of your English practice as a daily habit, like brushing your teeth.
One great tip is to find a specific time in your day when you can focus on learning English. Maybe it's in the morning before you start your day, or at night before you go to bed. Find what works best for you and stick to that time every day. It's easier to build a habit when you have a routine.
Another tip is to connect your English practice with something you already do. For example, if you have a cup of coffee every morning, you can practice English while you're drinking it. You could listen to a podcast, review vocabulary, or read a short article. By combining English with something you already do, it becomes easier to make it part of your routine.
I really like that idea. It makes learning feel natural instead of like an extra task you have to do. And if you're someone who's busy with work or school, this is a great way to fit English practice into your day without feeling overwhelmed.
Now, let's talk about one of the most common challenges when learning English speaking. Many learners feel nervous or shy when it comes to speaking English. It's completely normal to feel this way, but the best way to overcome it is by practicing. The more you practice speaking, the more comfortable you will become.
Right. One thing that helps is practicing speaking out loud, even when you're alone. For example, when you're reading something in English, try reading it out loud. Or, if you're thinking about what you need to do during the day, say it out loud in English. This will help you get used to hearing yourself speak English, and it will boost your confidence.
Another good tip is to practice speaking in front of a mirror. This might feel a little strange at first, but it's actually really helpful. When you speak in front of a mirror, you can see how your mouth moves and how you pronounce words. It also helps you feel more confident because you're speaking to yourself. You're getting comfortable with speaking before you have to speak with other people.
And don't forget, you can always record yourself speaking English. This is a great way to see how much progress you're making. You can record yourself reading a text or just talking about your day. Then, listen to the recording and see how you sound. Over time, you'll notice that your pronunciation and fluency improve.
That's a great point. Plus, when you listen to yourself, you can identify areas where you need to improve. Maybe you notice that you're having trouble with a certain sound or that you're pausing too much. Once you know what to work on, you can focus on improving those specific areas.
And remember, practice doesn't have to be perfect. The goal is to get used to speaking, even if you make mistakes. In fact, it's better to make mistakes during practice because that's how you learn. No one expects you to be perfect right away. What's important is that you're trying, and that's something to be proud of.
Speaking of making mistakes, let's talk about feedback. When you're learning English, getting feedback is really important. It helps you understand what you're doing well and what you need to improve. If you're practicing with a teacher, they can give you feedback directly. But even if you don't have a teacher, you can still get feedback in other ways.
One way is by using language exchange apps. There are apps where you can talk to native English speakers who want to learn your language. It's a great way to practice English and get feedback from someone who speaks the language fluently. Plus, you get to help someone learn your language, so it's a win-win.
That's a really fun way to practice. And if you're not comfortable with speaking to someone just yet, you can start by typing or texting in English. It's less pressure than speaking, but it still gives you a chance to practice forming sentences and using new vocabulary.
Another option for feedback is to join online communities for English learners. There are lots of forums and groups where people share their experiences and help each other improve. You can ask questions, share your progress, and get advice from others who are also learning English.
Yes, being part of a community can really motivate you to keep going. When you see other people learning and making progress, it encourages you to do the same. Plus, it's a great way to make friends and connect with others who share the same goal.
Let's also talk about the importance of reviewing what you've learned. When you're learning new words or grammar, it's easy to forget things if you don't review them. So, make sure to spend time going over what you've already learned. This will help you remember it better.
That's so important. And reviewing doesn't have to be boring. You can make it fun by using flashcards, playing language games, or even teaching what you've learned to someone else. Teaching is one of the best ways to really understand something because it forces you to explain it clearly.
Great idea. Plus, when you review, you can see how far you've come. It's easy to feel like you're not making progress when you're focused on what you don't know yet. But when you look back at what you've learned, you'll see just how much you've improved.
Yes, it's important to stay positive and remember that every small step is progress. Learning English isn't a race, and everyone learns at their own pace. What matters is that you're moving forward, even if it feels slow sometimes.
And don't be afraid to mix things up. If you're feeling stuck, try changing how you're learning. Maybe try a new method, like using a different app, watching different kinds of videos, or practicing with a new language partner. Variety keeps learning interesting and fun.
Absolutely. The more different ways you practice, the better. Every method teaches you something new and gives you a different perspective on the language. It also keeps you motivated because you won't get bored doing the same thing every day.
So, to sum up this part, we've talked about building habits, overcoming the fear of speaking, and finding ways to get feedback. These are all important steps in your 100-day journey to mastering English. The more you practice, the more natural it will become, and soon you'll be using English without even thinking about it.
Now that we've covered habits and getting comfortable with speaking, let's focus on something that many learners find challenging: vocabulary and grammar. These are the building blocks of any language. Without vocabulary, you can't express your thoughts, and without grammar, it's difficult to put those thoughts together correctly. But don't worry, there are easy and fun ways to improve both vocabulary and grammar.
Exactly. Let's start with vocabulary. A lot of people think they need to know thousands of words to speak English well, but that's not true. You don't need a huge vocabulary to start communicating effectively. What you need is the right vocabulary, the words that are most useful for your daily life.
That's such a good point. You can start by focusing on words that are common in everyday conversations. For example, words related to food, transportation, work, or shopping. These are things you talk about often, so it's important to know the words and phrases that will help you in these situations.
One effective way to learn new words is by grouping them into categories. For example, instead of just learning random words, group them by topics. You could have one list of food words, one list for travel, another for hobbies, and so on. This way, you can easily remember words because they're connected to a specific idea or activity.
I love that idea. It makes learning more organized and less overwhelming. Plus, when you group words together, you start to see patterns, like words that are used together in sentences. This is called collocation, which means certain words naturally go together. For example, we say make a decision but take a shower. Learning these word pairs can make your English sound much more natural.
Yes, collocations are really useful because they help you understand how native speakers put words together. Another good technique is to use new words as much as possible. When you learn a new word, don't just write it down and forget about it. Try to use it in a sentence right away. If you can, use it in your conversations or write a short paragraph using the new word. The more you use it, the more it becomes part of your active vocabulary.
Another fun way to learn vocabulary is by using flashcards. You can make your own flashcards or use apps that have pre-made sets of cards. Flashcards are great because they help you test yourself. You see the word in English, and you try to remember what it means. Or you can see the meaning in your language and try to remember the English word.
And don't just focus on single words. Learning phrases and expressions is just as important. Phrases like "how's it going?" or "can you help me with this?" are used all the time in English, and knowing these will help you sound more fluent. You can even learn full sentences that you can use in different situations. It's a great way to start speaking more naturally.
Exactly. And remember, learning vocabulary isn't just about memorizing words. It's about understanding how to use them in real life. So pay attention to how words are used in the context of conversations, stories, or videos you watch. This will give you a deeper understanding of how English speakers use certain words in everyday situations.
And speaking of understanding words in context, that brings us to reading. Reading is one of the best ways to expand your vocabulary. When you read, you see words being used in sentences so you can understand their meaning and how they're used with other words. Plus, you're more likely to remember new words if you've seen them in a sentence rather than just as a single word.
That's so true. You don't need to start with long, difficult books. You can read simple stories, news articles, or even blogs. And when you come across a word you don't know, try to guess the meaning from the other words around it. This is called context clues, and it's a skill that will help you learn new words faster.
Another great way to improve your vocabulary is by keeping a vocabulary notebook. Every time you learn a new word, write it down in your notebook, but don't just write the word. Write a sentence using the word, and if possible, include a note about how to use it. For example, if you learn the word delicious, you can write, "The pizza was delicious." Over time, you'll build a personal dictionary that you can review whenever you want.
And reviewing is really important. It's not enough to just learn a word once. You need to see it, hear it, and use it many times before it becomes part of your active vocabulary. So go back to your vocabulary notebook regularly and review the words you've learned. Try using them in different ways to really make them stick in your memory.
Now, let's talk a little bit about grammar. For many learners, grammar can feel like the hardest part of learning English. But the good news is, you don't need to know all the grammar rules right away. You can start with the basics and build from there. The important thing is to focus on grammar that will help you communicate better in everyday situations.
Yes, basic grammar is usually enough to help you get by in most conversations. For example, learning how to use the present tense, past tense, and future tense will help you talk about what you're doing, what you did, and what you're going to do. These are the most common things we talk about in daily life.
And just like with vocabulary, learning grammar is more about using it than just memorizing rules. When you learn a new grammar point, practice using it right away. For example, if you're learning how to use the past tense, try talking or writing about what you did yesterday. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel.
Another thing that helps is to listen to how native speakers use grammar. You don't have to study grammar books all the time. By listening to conversations, watching movies, or even listening to podcasts, you'll start to notice how grammar is used naturally in sentences. This will help you understand the rules without even realizing it.
That's a really good tip. And when you're listening, don't be afraid to pause and repeat what you hear. If you hear someone say a sentence in the past tense, for example, try repeating it yourself. This will help you get used to the sound and feel of English grammar.
And speaking of getting used to English, immersion is another powerful way to improve both your vocabulary and grammar. Immersion means surrounding yourself with as much English as possible. You don't have to move to an English-speaking country to do this. You can create an English environment wherever you are.
That's true. You can immerse yourself by changing the language on your phone or computer to English. Or try to watch English TV shows and movies without subtitles in your native language. This might feel difficult at first, but over time, you'll start to understand more and more.
Yes, and immersion doesn't have to be all at once. You can start by immersing yourself in small ways. For example, if you usually watch TV in your language, try watching one episode in English. Or if you usually read the news in your language, try reading one article in English. Little by little, you'll start to feel more comfortable using English in your everyday life.
And don't forget, language is about communication, not perfection. You don't need to know every word or grammar rule to be understood. The goal is to communicate your ideas as clearly as possible. If you make a mistake, that's okay. Native speakers make mistakes too. What matters is that you're practicing and improving.
Exactly, and the more you use English, the more natural it will feel. Eventually, you'll start thinking in English without even realizing it. That's one of the biggest signs that you're truly mastering the language when it starts to feel automatic.
So, to sum up this part, focus on learning vocabulary that's useful for your life and don't worry about knowing every word. Practice grammar in real-life situations and don't stress too much about getting everything perfect. Use English as much as possible, whether it's reading, listening, or speaking, and immerse yourself in the language in small but consistent ways.
Yes, and remember, every time you practice, you're one step closer to mastering English. Even if it feels slow sometimes, you're always moving forward. Just keep going, and before you know it, you'll be amazed at how much you've learned. In the previous parts, we talked about building daily habits, gaining confidence in speaking, expanding vocabulary, and improving grammar. Now, in this last section, we're going to focus on two key ideas: listening and writing. Both of these skills are essential for mastering English, especially if you're aiming to do it in just 100 days. We'll also talk about staying motivated because learning a language, especially in a short time, requires dedication and persistence.
Absolutely. Let's start with listening. Listening is often underrated, but it's actually one of the most important parts of learning a language. Why? Because the more you listen, the better you understand how native speakers talk, including their pronunciation, intonation, and even slang or informal language. Listening helps you get used to the rhythm of English, which will make it easier for you to speak and understand others.
That's true. When we listen to native speakers, we don't just learn the words, they teach us how to sound more natural. A lot of learners struggle with pronunciation or understanding fast speech. But the more you listen, the more you'll get used to how words connect, how sentences flow, and how English speakers actually use the language in everyday life. So if you really want to master English, make listening a daily part of your learning.
Exactly. But how can you improve your listening skills if you're still learning the basics? Well, start with something simple. You don't have to listen to complicated podcasts or watch advanced movies. You can start with children's stories or news articles that are made for English learners. You can also use language apps that have listening exercises. Many of them allow you to listen to short, clear sentences spoken by native speakers.
Another great idea is to watch TV shows or YouTube videos with English subtitles. This way, you're listening to English while reading the words at the same time. Over time, try turning off the subtitles and see how much you can understand without them. The key here is practice. The more you expose yourself to English audio, the more familiar it will become.
And it's also important to listen to different types of English. As you probably know, English is spoken differently in different countries. There's American English, British English, Australian English, and so on. Each has its own accent and some different vocabulary. By listening to a variety of accents, you'll be prepared to understand English speakers from all over the world.
Yes, and don't forget to listen actively. Listening passively, like when you have English playing in the background while you're doing something else, is good. But active listening is even better. This means focusing on the audio and really trying to understand what's being said. If you don't understand something, pause, replay it, and try to figure it out. Active listening helps you catch the details and trains your brain to focus on the language.
And don't get discouraged if you don't understand everything right away. Listening takes time, but it's one of the fastest ways to improve your overall English skills. The more you listen, the more words you'll pick up, and the better you'll get at following conversations, even when they're spoken quickly.
Now, let's switch gears and talk about writing. A lot of learners focus on speaking and listening, but writing is just as important. Writing helps you practice the grammar and vocabulary you've been learning. Plus, it gives you time to think and organize your thoughts in English, which can improve your speaking later on.
Writing is a great way to reinforce what you've learned. When you write, you have to think about sentence structure, grammar, and word choice. This helps solidify those rules in your mind. And the more you write, the better you'll get at expressing your ideas in English.
One simple way to practice writing is to keep a daily journal in English. You don't have to write long paragraphs. Just write a few sentences about what you did that day, how you're feeling, or what your plans are for tomorrow. Over time, this will help you become more comfortable expressing yourself in English.
And don't worry if your sentences aren't perfect. The goal is to practice, not to be perfect. Even if you make mistakes, the important thing is that you're using English regularly. In fact, making mistakes is part of the learning process. When you write something down and later realize it was incorrect, you're more likely to remember the correct way to say it in the future.
That's right. Another useful exercise is to write short stories or dialogues. Pick a topic that interests you, maybe something related to your hobbies or your favorite movie, and write a story about it. You can also write dialogues, like conversations between two people. This will help you practice writing sentences that sound natural and conversational.
And don't forget about the internet. There are many online communities where English learners can practice writing. You can join forums or social media groups where people share their writing and give each other feedback. This is a great way to improve because you'll not only get tips from other learners, but also see how they write in English.
Another good tip is to read what you've written out loud. This helps you practice both your writing and speaking skills at the same time. When you read your sentences out loud, you can hear how they sound and check if they flow naturally. If something doesn't sound right, you can revise it.
And that brings us to an important point: don't rush. Learning a language, even in 100 days, doesn't mean you have to be perfect by the end. The goal is progress. Every day, try to improve a little bit. Some days will be better than others, and that's okay. The important thing is to keep practicing and to stay motivated.
Motivation is key. It's easy to feel excited in the beginning, but sometimes, after a few weeks, the excitement fades. That's normal, but remember why you started learning English in the first place. Maybe it's for work, school, or travel. Maybe you want to communicate with people from around the world. Whatever your reason, keep it in mind whenever you feel tired or frustrated.
A great way to stay motivated is to set small goals for yourself. For example, you can set a goal to learn 10 new words a day or to listen to 15 minutes of English audio every morning. When you reach your small goals, you'll feel a sense of accomplishment, and that will keep you motivated to keep going.
And don't be afraid to reward yourself. Learning a language is hard work. So when you reach a milestone like finishing a book in English or having a conversation with a native speaker, celebrate your achievement. Give yourself a small reward to recognize your hard work. This will help you stay positive and motivated.
Another tip is to find a study buddy. Learning English with someone else, whether it's a friend, family member, or online partner, can make the process more enjoyable. You can practice speaking, correct each other's writing, and even compete to see who can learn more words in a week. Having someone to share your progress with will make the journey more fun and less lonely.
Yes, and don't forget to take breaks when you need them. It's important to stay consistent, but it's also important to rest. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take a short break, clear your mind, and come back to your studies refreshed. This way, you'll avoid burnout and keep your motivation high.
So, to wrap everything up, mastering English in 100 days is definitely possible, but it requires dedication, consistent practice, and a positive mindset. Focus on building daily habits, get comfortable with speaking, expand your vocabulary, improve your grammar, practice listening and writing, and stay motivated by setting small goals and rewarding yourself.
Remember, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. Every day you practice is a day you're getting closer to your goal. So keep going, stay focused, and enjoy the journey. Learning English is an incredible skill that will open so many doors for you, whether it's for your career, travel, or personal growth.
Thank you for joining us on this journey to mastering English in 100 days. We hope you found these tips helpful and that you're feeling motivated to take the next steps in your language learning.
And before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share this podcast with your friends and family who are also learning English. Together, we can all reach our goals faster. Keep practicing, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Good luck on your English journey, and remember, you've got this. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.